So when we think about Native Americans and the Europeans, we think of this clash of civilizations, right? Modern politics has taught us that white people and Native Americans were nothing but enemies, and white people have massacred the Native Americans, just ruthlessly and with vigor, right? There was never a working relationship. But in 1700, there was actually quite the working relationship. And when you would think about towns up in New England, the common theme would be to see Native Americans regularly inside of these villages as they were making contacts and trading.
Wow.
These were significant trade partners. When you talked about the West, like you guys did earlier, what the West was not the Colorado area. That's not what the West was. The West was only considered 20 miles inland and just maybe a little bit. That was the backcountry.
Yeah.
That's when you get to the Ohio River Valley. That was the West back then, right?
Wow.
So when we think about, Germantown in 1700, there was actually a pretty good working relationship between these two civilizations that had just completely different worldviews. So with that in mind, I have something I wanted to read about how this is a pastor in 1700 that wrote back to Germany about his experiences. He described Native Americans for Europeans who had never seen, but only heard about, this amazing new person that, Western civilization had not yet seen because there's no pictures available. So this is from 1700. This is a pastor. This is really interesting because when we think about it, all we think about is this destructive nature of whites on the native population.
Right.
Now, this is not a generalization, but this is just a really interesting letter that he wrote. So this guy's name was Daniel Pasperius, and what he wrote was this. He says, "The natives, the so-called savages, they are in general strong, agile, and supple people with blackish bodies. They went about naked at first, and only wore a cloth about the loins. Now they're beginning to wear shirts. They have usually coal black hair. They shave the head. They smear the same with grease and allow a long lock to grow down the right side of their head. They also besmear the children with grease and let them creep about in the heat of the sun so that they become the color of a nut, although they were at first white enough by nature. They strive after a sincere honesty, hold strictly to their promises, cheat and injure no one. They willingly give shelter to others and are both useful and loyal to their guests. I once saw 4 of them take a meal together in hearty contentment and eat a pumpkin cooked in clear water without butter and spice. Their table and bench was just the bare earth. Their spoons were mussel shells, which they dipped up with warm water. Their plates were the leaves of the nearest tree, which they do not need to wash with painstaking care after each use for the future in mind. I thought to myself, these savages have never in their lives heard of the teachings of Jesus concerning temperance and contentment, yet they far excel the Christians in carrying it out. They are furthermore serious in a few words, and are amazed when they perceive so much unnecessary chatter as well as other foolish behavior on part of us Christians. Each man has his own wife, and they detest harlotry, kissing, and lying. They know of no idols, but they worship a single all-powerful and merciful God who limits the power of the devil. They also believe in the immortality of the soul, which, after the course of their life is finished, has a suitable recompense from the all-powerful hand of God awaiting it." So this letter just shows the kind of information that was being sent back to Europe. Not of a tribalistic, savage is what we think of, but more of, there's a lot of interesting things to take of it. Number one, the thing is that they are naturally white people. That's a big thing too, right? In order to become civilized, you have to have this whiteness in you in that sense. They tan their children being out in the sun. So it's interesting that there's this working together, these two cultures early on, not what we really see now. There was a lot of battles, and one would wrong the other, and the other would go back and slaughter, and the slaughters became cyclical, and that happened. And that's ultimately what befell the foreign relationship between the two countries. But in 1700, there was great hope that these two communities would work together and live together, which gives us a reason for Thanksgiving. All of these different clashing of worldviews came together and was able to work out
I love it
together. So anyways, that's mine.
Thank you, Jonathan. That was great. I love it.